Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Amateur Experts Podcast, where we are experts on absolutely nothing. I'm your host, Landon Oliver, here with my co-host, Andrew Scott. What's going on, dog?
Another beautiful week of football behind us, man. I'm just sad that we're already somehow 6 weeks in, but it was another very, very entertaining weekend from the National Football League. So I'm doing good, man.
Yeah. Anytime the Colts come away with a win, I'm always having a good weekend. And speaking of, now we have our week 6 review where we're going to go over, our smash pass results, how our DFS lineup did. And then on top of that, give you our risers, our fallers, and our sleepers through 6 weeks. Some of these teams are probably going to be the same as you've heard. But, even then, there's only so much
you're gonna have
do.
some repeats when you do this every
Yep.
week.
I was gonna say, there's always gonna be. I think the biggest thing too, like, and we don't necessarily do power rankings. I guess you can kind of consider this like that, but power rankings are so like win and loss, I guess, weighted, by win and loss record, and this is more of like just the eye test, like the
Maybe we should do our own power rankings one week, just so we can do it the right way.
Maybe we should do halfway through the season and then end of the season going into the playoffs. That way it's not.
Because ours wouldn't be, I know ours wouldn't be win-loss based.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily as clear cut as win-loss. Like there's some losses
I agree.
there's always a lot more to it, which is why we usually do, our risers, our fallers, and then our sleepers. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting through 6 weeks. I've seen a lot of like after last night, obviously, if you watch the game, the Bills lost to the Titans. Sucks for me, but it was a great game. Fantastic game to watch. Derrick Henry is an alien. He's not a real life person. But I've seen a lot of power rankings today knocking the Bills down all the way to like 5th or 6th. And reality is, if Josh Allen doesn't slip on the turf last night, just one slip, they probably find a way to win that game. I don't think Tennessee, I think the clock management from both teams at the end of that game was just horrendous on both sides. And so if Josh Allen doesn't slip, he finds a way to get in. Tennessee's not going to have time to, march down the field and score a touchdown. And then everybody still got the Bills at number 1. So, I mean, that's the problem with win and loss is you're telling me just because Josh Allen lost his footing and was stopped on 4th down that the Bills automatically are now just like the 6th best team in football.
Right.
Like that's just ridiculous to me. Looking at you, ESPN. It's stupid. So
I agree.
That's and let's, you need to give the Titans their roses too on that. Like that was a fantastic win by that team. That team has, as we saw in the Seattle game, that team has no quit in them. You literally have to play all 60 minutes against the Tennessee Titans because they're never out of that game. They're literally one handoff away from being back in any game. So yeah, anything you want to say before we go ahead and get started?
No, I mean, I could toot my own horn in terms of how fantasy is going, but nobody cares about your fantasy team, so yeah. I'll leave that at bay. But just know, the two guys on the show aren't doing too bad in fantasy this year. So while we might not be experts, we must know a little bit of what we're talking about to be seeing the success we're seeing so far this year.
Yeah, and speaking of fantasy, look, we'll already go ahead. Like last week, and then the combination of the injuries last week, all the guys that we lost for not only 1 week but a prolonged period of time, it looks like, and then combined with the bye weeks this week.
Oh my God, the apocalypse.
Yes, it is terrible. I literally have a team that all but 3 players on my roster are on bye week or on IR. all but 3 guys.
Yeah, that's brutal.
So yeah, I've got to do some waiver wire. I got to do some addition, subtraction. I've got to add guys that and look, if you're in this situation like me, I've got some guys that like I'm just going to take zeros on because I don't want to lose these guys on my roster just to add a player that I'm not going to give a shit about next week just to get through the bye week. So there's a good chance in probably 2 or 3 leagues. Like I'm just going to take an L this week. I'm not dropping these guys. And then, you know, once I get past this bye week, I'm good the rest of the year. It is what it is. So yeah, if you're in this situation and you have, you know, multiple guys like me that are on bye week and or IR, you know, don't drop these really good players just to fill a position this week. You know, you might have to take a zero on some spots and hope for the best. But you need to prepare for the worst. And then next week, you're all good. You have your lineup pretty much intact for the rest of the season. And it's a long season left. So don't overreact to just one bye week. So I wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, I agree. You're not dropping it. The way that I always look at it is, if the player I'm about to drop was already on waivers, would I be trying to pick him up? And if the answer is yes, then you don't drop him.
Exactly.
Like you just you hold on to that guy. You do what you got to do. So that's how I always look at it, and that's kind of helped me make some decisions in the past. So hopefully, maybe if somebody isn't already thinking about it that way, maybe that can help.
Yeah, and I mean this, like Andrew called it, the bipocalypse. It's
bad, man.
It is insane. This is the worst, probably gonna be the worst bye week between this week and next week. And then, like I said, you had a lot of guys go down. Rest in peace, Kareem Hunt. My boy.
Sucks, man.
Brutal. And now I'm literally rolling out, you know, AJ Green, Rashad Bateman, which aren't bad options, but you know, I have 3 decent running backs. One of those is on bye week. One of those is now on IR. So now I'm starting both Lions running backs. Josh Allen is out. So I'm starting.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Starting Jameis Winston. I have Jameis Winston, both Lions running backs. AJ Green. Let's see. I mean,
it's rough, man.
It's a rough week. Oh, you should.
That's week 7. That's week 7 in a nutshell for a lot of people this year or this season. I mean, this is by far the most brutal weeks in terms of bye weeks. So
yeah, the worst one now is going into this week 7. I have, like I said, on the team that I literally have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 guys that are not playing, whether that's due to bye weeks or COVID. I don't have a quarterback. I don't have a running back. I have DeAndre Swift, Darnell Mooney, Brandon Ayuk, Hawkinson, Nyheim Hines, Robbie Anderson, and no defense. And that is my team for the week.
That's rough, man.
Yeah, projected to score 55 points. So we'll see how this goes.
See what happens whenever waivers process in the morning.
Yeah, well, I can already tell you, I'm sure, knowing the guys we play with, I'm sure somebody has blown their load on literally every person available on waivers.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So I'm not really putting too much stock into it. Like I said, there's going to be sometimes like I'm just going to take an L on the week, probably not even put somebody in that spot, and just I'll regroup next week, move on. So now, speaking of moving on, we're going to move on to our week 6 review, which includes our risers, our fallers, and our surprises of the week. Well, not necessarily this week, but through 6 weeks. And like I said, a lot of these are going to be teams, or not a lot of them, just 1 or 2 of them might be teams that we've talked on in the past, but just keep, they keep performing well.
All right.
Whenever we're expecting a fall off, they're not falling off, which is awesome. It's pretty fun to see. So let's go ahead, get into our risers for the week. I'll let you kick it off.
So for me, it was the Green Bay Packers this week, and not that I necessarily expected them to fall off, but I did think playing the Bears in Chicago with the injuries Green Bay is dealing with, I thought that there was a chance that the Packers could even possibly lose this game. Now, Justin Fields is still early, in his career, still looking shaky at times. But with the defense they have there in Chicago, especially the defensive line and then the offensive line issues that Green Bay has had so far this year, I thought that, there could really be some disruption there. And that's kind of the reason I have them on the risers this week, is how good that offensive line looked against the Bears defensive front. That was something I was not expecting to see this weekend. And I don't want to put too much stock. The other thing that surprised me was Green Bay's secondary looking as good as it did without Jair Alexander. And there's one other injury they're dealing with, but it's slipping my mind right now. But I want to say that that's another reason, but honestly, I didn't think they would be tested too much anyway with with Justin Fields still kind of working his way in, and Matt Nagy continuing to be a terrible play caller, even though he's supposed to be an offensive guru. But that's another topic for discussion. But so I don't want to read too much into the secondary, but the offensive line was really the big takeaway for me in this game. And we've been doing this for so many weeks now. I've kind of tried to move away from just talking about a team, broadly, right, and kind of focusing on position groups and things like that. And they were the big winners for me this week, with the tough matchup, the injuries they're facing. I thought that they did a really good job compared to what I was expecting this weekend. And then Aaron Rodgers, man, this wasn't even like his best game, but he's just so incredible, man. In that moment where he scored that touchdown and just let the fucking Bears fans have it. Yeah. Oh, he said, normally I try to black out the crowd, but I looked up in the crowd and saw this lady flipping the middle finger to me, and I just went off. I was like, that's so incredible, man. And Aaron Rodgers,
I owned you all of your life.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers fixed the taunting penalty. Like Aaron Rodgers showed you just taunt the fans. Don't taunt the opposing team's players. Just taunt the fans, and you'll be fine. I loved it, dude. I loved every second of that. I had to go back and watch that and rewatch that. And speaking of taunting, that's essentially my risers. But another one of my favorite moments of this weekend, one because I love him as a player and I was really high on him coming into this year. But whenever CeeDee Lamb caught that walk-off touchdown and like slowed his pace into the end zone, and then the Patriots player pushes him into the end zone essentially, and he just stands up and you can see this big ass smile behind his face mask, and he's just like that. I like these guys taunt, man. It's so much more fun.
Yeah, because at that point the game's over. Like,
right, there's no penalty to be called.
No penalty. The game's
there's
over.
nothing they could do about that one. But so it's like my two of my most favorite moments from this weekend were two taunting plays. Like it's fun, man. These guys work hard for this shit. There has to be a point, but like these guys should be able to celebrate and should be able to, I don't know.
There's so much, like you said, like these guys work so hard for this, but then on top of that, like you get out there and you're hitting grown men. Like there's so much emotion that goes into a football game.
Yeah, these guys are beating each other around for hours.
And to ask these guys to basically become robots and have no emotion. Like the game is built on emotion. It's built on momentum. You make a big play on defense, on offense, like you want to be able to celebrate that. And it's extremely unfortunate. I see certain things on like why the league wants to do this, because they want to try to set an example.
Right. That's why I do think there should be a point.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a point.
But some of these taunting penalties this year, man, it's just like,
this year has been,
God.
Yeah, it's been terrible. It's about, I'd say it's on par with the roughing the passer penalties that have been called recently.
You see the one on Kyler Murray?
Oh my God, yeah. That instantly popped into my head.
Should have just been like touching the passer.
Yeah,
this should have been what that penalty was called.
Which is another reason why, like, the numbers that you're going to see put up over the next 10 years, like yeah, they're fun. Yeah, it's cool for fantasy. It holds absolutely no stock when looking at the record books to me. Like, it's not going to be something that, like, I'm going to be like, well, this rookie broke the passer. He threw.
It's going to be a new rookie record, like damn near every year.
He threw 43, or this quarterback threw 58 touchdowns this year. He broke Peyton Manning's record of 55. And it's pitiful to watch. Especially like some of these games actually getting decided on taunting penalties. There was a game, I don't know if it was this week or last week, I can't remember, but it might have even been the Thursday night game last week.
I can't remember which game it was either, but I know what you're talking. I know what you're about to reference.
I think Baltimore was involved. I think it was one of the Baltimore games that it was a defensive player made a big defensive stop at the end of a game. It would have ended the game. And he got up and looked in the direction of the offensive player. He didn't say anything. He literally stared at him, like just looked at him. They called it taunting, 15 yards. Offense gets a first down. They march down, score, and win the game. So you're having games decided by a guy.
Stare downs.
Yeah, by a guy looking at another player. And these affect livelihoods. Like coaches lose their jobs. Players get replaced. This affects people's lives. We could be on this soapbox all night, but
yeah. So essentially, my riser for this week was the Green Bay Packers and the taunting of fans and other players that did not get penalized. That was my rising moments of the weekend.
Yes, and I loved it too. That's absolutely fantastic. I've watched that Aaron Rodgers clip multiple. My mom, who, as we know, if you listen to the show, is a massive Packers fan.
Right.
She sent it to. She keeps sending it to me like every other day. Like, she'll send it, a couple times a day. She'll be like, I can't believe he said this. And I'm like, I can. Like, it's so funny. So my riser of the week. I actually had to think about this one because there's been so many decent teams. And I finally settled on the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I know that might have been different than what we discussed pre-show. I can't even remember who I said pre-show. Was it the Ravens or?
I don't remember either, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
With you, I'm rolling with you.
Yeah. So
we talked about it very briefly before we hit record.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been so busy today with work and all that stuff. I haven't really had much time to think about everything, but yeah. So it just continues to impress me that no matter how injured this team gets, which if you didn't hear the news, they also lost Ronnie Stanley for the season, their left tackle, Pro Bowl, all pro left tackle,
right,
is now out for the year to join all 14 running backs on the roster, as well as all their cornerbacks. And Patrick Queen, I believe, is banged up as well, starting linebacker. Rashad Bateman just returned. Sammy Watkins was out. It's just insane to watch what Lamar Jackson has done through the first 6 weeks of the season. And to me, he's my MVP through 6 weeks. I've moved him up above Justin Herbert, who's still having a phenomenal game. I could argue realistically, if I knew it was going to somebody, Derrick Henry, in my opinion, should be the most valuable player in football. But
I just know the NFL's not going to give it to a non-quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, to be fair, if they're going to give it to a running back, who's better than Lamar Jackson? I'm kidding, Ravens fans. Actually, I love Lamar Jackson. So to watch what he's done with all the chaos that's been around him, the injuries, the schedule. I mean, they haven't had an easy schedule to kick off at all. And the fact that they are atop the AFC, one of the best teams in the NFL, I'd say probably top 2 or 3. Now we'll see how the Ronnie Stanley injury affects them. Eventually, you can't keep losing guys and keep, performing. Right. I mean, eventually it's going to bite you, but so far it hasn't. And that's basically been because of one guy. And the coaching staff there, which we all know how great of a coach Harbaugh is, one of the best coaches in football. But the coaching staff there has just done an absolutely fantastic job of getting these guys ready every single week. And they rally around Lamar, and they've snatched victory from defeat from a lot of games that they've played in.
Kansas City, Detroit, Indy,
Indianapolis. Yeah, I mean they should have lost. And I mean those are outside of the Detroit, I mean those are multiple pretty. I mean they're good teams. So I mean it's.
And they might always not always be pretty. They might have shoulda, woulda, coulda lost the games, but they keep finding ways to win them. And
yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, you coulda, woulda, shoulda all you want.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, once the game ends, it's a W or an L there, right beside your name, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how many yards you threw for. It doesn't matter if your kicker could have, hit the field goal, or with the Colts. I mean, like I said, that Colts game, they missed a field goal, 2 extra points, and they had a blocked field goal as well. That all 3, or all 4 instances would have won the game. At the end of the day, none of that matters. Baltimore wins the game. They get the W. You have to find a way to win these games. And Lamar Jackson just finds a way to win. And he's literally one of the most unstoppable forces we've seen. I'd probably say at least over the last 10 to 20 years, just from the ability aspect of like, this guy can literally kill you from everywhere. Like, it doesn't matter if it's running, it doesn't matter if it's throwing. His growth as a thrower, and I know we talked about it, I believe you mentioned it even last week.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson just himself was my riser last week.
Yeah, so. Exactly. So I mean, it's been incredible to watch. And a lot of people forget this guy's still under 25 years old. He's
only going to get better.
Yeah, exactly. Which is scary,
terrifying.
Yeah. Like I said, eventually, which I mean, I don't know how much better he can get. I literally, I don't know if it's possible, because I think this is peak quarterback play in 2021. Like, you're seeing him hit guys from different angles. You're seeing him make throws down the field. He's throwing into tight windows. He has the weapons, but then on top of that, at any point in time, he can just take off and go for 60 yards for a touchdown.
And he's pretty much always the fastest player on the field.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, regardless of position. I mean, you're, once the guy's in the open field, you're toast at that point. So it's been interesting just to see the way that he's lifted everybody around him, whether it's throwing the ball, whether it's running the ball, whether it's, in the huddle or on the sideline. Just watch Lamar Jackson on the sideline if you want to see what a fantastic leader looks like. During a game, he's out there hyping guys up on the defense. He's running around, celebrating when they make a play. He makes sure, you can just tell the command that guy has, the respect that his teammates have for him, that, they know that, like, at the end of the day, no matter how much, how many points we're down, we have this guy on our team, and this guy can lead us. And right now they look absolutely fantastic. So yeah, they're my biggest riser of the week, and more specifically, just to echo what you did last week, but was another week of really good performances. It's Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and I mean, like, numbers wise, if you just like if you want to box score the game, it didn't look great from a box score standpoint, but if you actually watch the game, Lamar controlled that game. Like, I mean, and the biggest, like, they didn't really have to do it this week, but the biggest difference for me with the Ravens that they have this year that they haven't had in years past is being able to come from behind and win games. That was just something to where the last couple of years, if they got down in a game, you felt like they were pretty much out of it. And with the progression that Lamar's made as a passer, and with the improvement in weapons that he has around him now, it's not like that anymore. Like, they can come back and win games, and they're a dangerous team now that they can do that, man. And I mean, yeah, I don't know how many people they're going to have to lose for it to catch up to them, because right now it's just like, injuries be damned. Yeah, next man up. Let's keep this thing rolling. So yeah, they've been really impressive.
Yeah, and even to echo too, like what you said there, like, it's very rare to find guys. If you're watching the YouTube, the guy that we actually have on the screen is one of the very few that can. There's a difference between being a great player and then controlling a game. Lamar Jackson controls a game, like of every aspect of the game, defense, offense. He can control an entire game, and that's so rare. And when you have a player like that, it's special to watch. Derrick Henry is another example. Like he controls the game, and you know, at any moment in time, these guys are capable of um, what Madden, calls superstars and X factors and whatever that bullshit
You're right.
is. Like these guys are real
They
life.
do it in real life.
Yeah, these guys do it in real life what you do in video games, and it's been absolutely insane to watch. So yeah, really excited about the Ravens. I think Ravens fans should be excited this year, and barring any changes, like this might be the year for them, to make some noise in the postseason finally.
Yeah. I'm really excited to watch this team. I really hope there's no more injuries. Like, cause I want this team to have a shot because they finally have the improvements that they wanted to see. And they've done a great job building that roster, but it's just falling apart right in front of them. So hopefully it stops and, they can see what they can do with this team. So, for our follow this week, I believe you and I ended up landing on the same team because it was a team that you and I both were really high on in the preseason, and they just simply have not delivered on those expectations 6 weeks into the season for a couple different reasons. But so we'll both get into some of those. But our faller for week 6 is the Cleveland Browns, and there are a lot of reasons for this. And I'll give my main reason for this, and let you make some points as well. But for me, the big thing that's kind of stuck out is that the defense just simply has not been as good as I thought it was going to be. On paper, this looked like one of the better defenses in football, and through 6 weeks of the season, that just simply has not been the case. Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney have been great. Nobody else on the defensive line has. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was great for 5 weeks. Week 6 was a really rough one for him. He was out there missing
Which
whole
I believe
mess of tackles.
He's on IR.
He did get hurt, yes. But he looked like he started off the game hurt from the jump. The way that he looked while he was out there. And then the secondary, Denzel Ward and John Johnson are doing their part. But outside of that, Ronnie Harrison, Troy Hill, Grady Williams, those other guys in the secondary, they were supposed to kind of, play those secondary roles too. Denzel Ward is the clear best corner on the team. John Johnson is the clear best safety on the team, but nobody else behind those two guys is picking up the slack. So this was a defense that I was really high on coming into the season. And now Myles Garrett has been every bit as advertised. He's probably defensive player of the year up to this point. I believe he leads the league in sacks, and that's with Chandler Jones starting the season off with 5 sacks right off the bat in week 1. I'm pretty sure Myles Garrett still hasn't beat right now. And granted, some of that was his performance against the Bears, Justin Fields' first start. But, I think he has an argument for defensive player of the year. Clowney looks really solid. But, yeah, just as a whole, top to bottom, the defense does not look as good as I thought it was going to look on paper. So that was a big reason I was so high on him. That was whenever we were doing our divisional preview. I spent the majority of my time on the Browns talking about the secondary and the improvements that they made. So I wanted to make sure to touch on that. And while John Johnson has been solid, some of those other guys in the secondary, outside of Denzel Ward and him, just really aren't cutting it. So I'll let you kind of dig into the Browns as well, since we're talking about the same team here.
Yeah. And a lot of the points that you made are kind of the same reason that I'm down on them. That defense has definitely not lived up to the preseason hype. But we all know how difficult defense is to play in today's, game where
Right.
everything is geared towards scoring points and, betting, fantasy, all that kind of stuff. For me, it basically just comes down to, if you watched the game this weekend, you saw the last two number one overall picks. Well, not the last two, because you had Trevor Lawrence in there, but two previous former number one overall picks go head to head.
And former teammates too.
Yeah, exactly. Both Oklahoma guys.
Yeah.
And I think you saw the difference between one number one overall pick and the other. Now, it's not saying I don't think the Browns can win with Baker Mayfield. I actually think they can, for sure. I think they can win with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. But I think it was more of a stark reminder of what a franchise, truly game-changing quarterback looks like on the other side. And the Browns were 1 year too late to get a guy like Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
But yeah, just watching that game, you could just tell Kyler Murray is just a different level of playmaker and quarterback than Baker Mayfield is. And we know Baker was hurt going into the game with the shoulder issue. He got hurt even worse during the game. Kareem Hunt got hurt. JOK got hurt. They're missing a lot of guys as well, but so are the Ravens, and they're still finding ways to win these games. And I'll tell you right now, both of us agreed that the Browns were one of the top two most talented rosters in the NFL coming into the season.
Mm-hmm.
And Baltimore is not as talented as a team, but they have Lamar Jackson. Arizona has Kyler Murray. Baker Mayfield has not played up to that level yet. Now he has been really good, a little bit inconsistent, but he has been a good quarterback. But I think in order to compete with it, you need a guy that's going to have those type of performances like Murray, like Lamar, like Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes. I just don't think Baker is there. That's not saying he can't be, because I think
he's still really young too.
Yeah. Well, that Hail Mary, he's still very young, but too, like that Hail Mary showed you, just how big of an arm he has. Yeah. I mean, the guy's got a massive arm. He can move well out of the pocket. I know it's been a struggle for him because he's had 4 different offensive coaches now going into year 4.
This is his first year having the same
exactly
play caller 2 years in a row.
The same system. So, and outside the injuries, like I said, I don't think Baker's bad. I think you can win. I think you can win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield as your quarterback. But I just need to see a little bit more from him. The Odell experiment has not worked at all.
It's so weird, man.
Yeah, and
them two just don't look comfortable with each other.
Well, even then too, like just watching Odell, like I don't know if it's the injuries that caught up with him or not. He's a step slower than he was in New York. And I know, his injury issues have been pretty well documented since he came to Cleveland. But he doesn't look like the same player either. And, they're missing a lot of their weapons as well. Jarvis Landry is out. I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones had a fantastic game this last week, but that's not a guy that you want as your number one guy going into a game.
He's a fine number 2. I think. Exactly. Like I do think he's a talented receiver.
I like him a lot. I think he's a fantastic receiver, but I don't think he's ready to take on that lead role.
Yeah, you don't want him to be what you thought OBJ was going to be for you. Like you don't want to have to rely on him for that.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how the season progresses once they get healthy, and it's still very early. But yeah, between the defense and just some of the regression on offense, especially now that they're missing their top 2 running backs, because we all know that offense basically runs through their running game with Chubb and Hunt. It's going to be interesting to see how those touches get divided up now with their 3rd and 4th string running backs, because they play Thursday, so they actually play in a couple of days.
Yeah, they've already ruled out Chubb and Hunt. Well, obviously Hunt, but Chubb.
And now JOK's out. Baker, he thinks he's going to play. He said he's going to do his best to play, but he's banged up too. Jedrick Wills, they lost him in week 1. He's been banged up. Who was their fantastic, left tackle. Last year was his rookie year. So yeah, it's another team with injuries, but that's the difference between having a Lamar Jackson and what Baker Mayfield is right now. Is the Ravens find a way to win those games. The Titans, even though they are 4-2, like the Titans find a way to win these games. The Arizona Cardinals are just absolutely ridiculous. They're by far, to me right now, the best team in football. And really
they should be considered that across the board.
Well, not only that, they've had the 4th hardest schedule.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point I was going to make, is they've beaten the Rams, they've beaten the Browns, they've beaten
the Titans.
The Titans, they killed the Titans. There was one other really tough team. I mean, they beat San Francisco. Like the teams they're playing are not just
pushovers.
Yeah. I mean,
let's look at their win, and they're not, they're not skating by on these teams either. They're, for the most part, they're taking it to them.
They barely beat the Vikings, and they barely beat the 49ers.
Yeah, so the Titans, the Vikings, the Jaguars, the Rams, the 49ers, and the Browns. They killed the Rams, they killed the Browns, they killed the Titans, which we all agree those 3 teams are really good. 3 of the better teams in football, and then they actually played
like they played down to their competition, because before Trevor Lawrence threw a pick 6, the Jacksonville game was close. The Minnesota game was close. The San Francisco game was close. Yeah.
Which we all know, divisional games.
Divisional games are weird. Yeah.
They're always weird. But yeah, I mean, it's been a I think we would do a disservice to the show if we didn't mention just how great Arizona has looked.
Yeah, they have, without a doubt. But yeah, I mean, whenever we were doing our playoff preview before the season started, I mentioned that my biggest concern with this team is whenever push comes to shove, if you need to count on Baker Mayfield to get you over the hump, I just don't think he's that guy. I don't think you can win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback. I just don't think he is in that elite tier. Which I think the rest of the roster,
that's what I mean by I think the rest of the roster can be as good enough. I don't think you can ask Baker Mayfield to carry the load for you to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But I do think you can win a Super Bowl with him at quarterback if the rest of your team is great to elite level, multiple positions.
But just looking at the week 1 Kansas City, Kansas City takes the lead right at the end of the game, and you're at a point where you have to throw. You can't depend on the offense, or you can't depend on the run game. You have to throw, and Baker comes up short. The Chargers game, the Chargers score a touchdown right there at the end of the game, 2-minute drill for Baker, comes up short. And I mean, those aren't easy situations to be put in, but there's a list of quarterbacks in the league where 2-minute drills come and you're not sweating too hard.
Yeah, you're not worried. No, I mean, obviously you're not going to win every single one of those situations.
No.
Yeah.
No,
I know what other people were going to say, to that point.
Yeah. Because I brought up those 2 instances.
This dude lost this 2-minute drill. Josh Allen last night,
Right.
Josh Allen didn't win the game last night.
Right.
But I mean, more often than not, these guys are going to come through.
Yeah. And my main point is Baker would not be on that list for me of guys that I would be comfortable within a 2-minute drill. I don't think it's how the team is built to succeed. I don't think
I think they're more of a get a big lead, run the clock with your running game, and let the defense, get the defense in the passing scenarios so you can let Myles Garrett go to work.
Yeah. So that was I thought that they were a playoff team. I thought that they were going to win this division, but I could not have them going all the way in the playoffs, because once you get to those top 4 teams, top two teams in your conference, whatever the case may be, like these are going to be close games where you're going to have to throw, you're going to have to come back from deficits, and
right. That's what I mean by like, with the Ravens and the Titans and, like these teams find a way to win those games.
Right. Right now it's just feeling like the Browns aren't,
and you can use, like I said, you can use the injury excuse all you want for the Browns, but look at the Titans and Ravens.
Yeah, they're hurting a lot more.
Every team is hurt at this point.
Yeah. But the Ravens being a riser, for me last week, for you this week, is another reason why Cleveland is a faller for us, because we both had Cleveland winning the division over Baltimore. If we're gonna pick the team that we picked to finish below them as a riser, it only makes sense to pick them as a faller.
Right. Which, granted, we both did have
that reason
Baltimore making the playoffs.
Right. Right. But I think we were both a little bit too high on Cleveland and a little bit too low on Baltimore. And
I agree.
You just gotta cut your losses, but it's weird, man, because it's such a weekly thing where
it's such a long season that like we could be looking back in 5 weeks at this podcast and being like, well, we missed that one.
Why did I criticize Baker Mayfield so much? Because I like Baker, I really do. Like I said some not so great things about him, but I like Baker as a quarterback, and I do think he is an above average quarterback in the league. I just don't think he is in that elite tier that Lamar has put himself.
That guys
into.
that that tier that you want into. That tier that whenever you pick a guy number 1 overall.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like he's not Jared Goff number 1 overall bad, but he's not Kyler Murray number 1 overall good. It's just it's one of those things. Yeah. He's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. And that's not always a bad thing.
No, it's certainly better than having Jared Goff.
If you look at how many number 1 overall quarterbacks have actually won, in the NFL.
Yeah.
And once you get past the Manning brothers, it's a very, very small list. So yeah, that'll wrap up both, because that was also my faller as well, as Andrew pointed out. So now we would get into our sleepers.
Surprise.
Yeah. Surprises through 6 weeks. I'll go ahead and let you take this one, or you just kind of took the Browns thing. So I think I'll actually take this one, and I'm going with the Cincinnati Bengals, which they have also been mentioned before on this podcast, but more specifically, I want to touch on Jamar Chase, and what Jamar Chase is doing through 6 weeks of his rookie year. It's the guy's right now on pace for 1,500 yards. He's actually on pace to outperform Justin Jefferson last year, and he hasn't played football in a year and a half,
right?
Which is insane. We all know the overblown preseason, the drops, and all that, and the Joe Burrow's offensive line, which we were one of those that were on that train as well. But there was no doubt, if you listen to this podcast, how we felt about Jamar Chase as a player, regardless if it was right for the Bengals or not at the time. It is definitely proven to be the right decision now. And Joe Burrow is looking every bit like the number 1 overall pick, franchise guy, a guy that comes in and elevates a roster regardless of talent. Because let's face it, that roster is relatively devoid of talent.
Other than the 2 names you brought up, there's not a whole lot of talent going on there.
Yeah, I mean, you have, the fantastic safety on the defense. You have some decent, not great defensive pieces, but there's some other guys there on the defense that they do deserve some mention. Joe Mixon's been a pretty decent running back. The offensive line has actually played relatively well. They have not been as bad as everybody thought they would be coming into the season. I think a lot of that has to do with Joe Burrow, because of his ability to manipulate the pocket and get the ball out quickly. But yeah, it's if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, you probably didn't have high expectations coming into this season, and can't say we blame you, because neither one of us, I think all of us, picked the Bengals to finish last in that division. And I'm not meaning just us on the show. I mean, in most people in every aspect of the media picked Cincinnati to finish last in that division. And I mean, that's a tough division, Somehow they are in second place in that division, above the Cleveland Browns, above the Pittsburgh Steelers. And through 6 weeks, it doesn't look like a fluke. It doesn't look like it's one of these, we've seen the Panthers and the Broncos, start 3-0. Now they're 3-3. They've lost 3 games in a row. The Bengals don't seem to be in that tier. Now, I don't think they're an elite tier yet because they do need some more talent, which this might be bad for them technically, because I watched it with Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck literally raised a horrid roster so far that they were picking in the 20s whenever they should have been picking in, the top 5, top 10. And he had to carry a pretty rough roster for the majority of his career up until he missed the game. They got the 3rd overall pick. Turn that into Quentin Nelson, Darius Leonard, all these other guys, and you see what happened with that. But I mean, what Joe Burrow's done, and especially what Jamar Chase has done, I think it's completely revitalized this franchise. It's revitalized this fan base. And I think it's changed the projection of where this franchise could go in the future. And that's what you want in a number 1 overall pick. That you want a guy that, they're now referring to him in Cincinnati as Joey Franchise. You want a guy that comes in and regardless of whether it's, the Bengals or the Jaguars or the Detroit Lions, or, you have a team that has underperformed for years and years and years, and they're one of the laughing stocks of the league. They can't ever seem to win. And you want to pick with that number 1 pick, you want a guy that's going to come in and they're going to completely change the face of that franchise. And I think that's what Joe Burrow's done. And I think pairing him with Jamar Chase might have been one of the best choices that organization has made in the last 20 years. Because now you have a franchise quarterback that can revitalize your franchise and make it into a contender. And now you have given him an elite, more than likely top 5 receiver in football for the foreseeable future in his career. I'm not afraid to say that I missed pretty hard on this one, not because I didn't like Jamar Chase, but I just thought protecting Joe Burrow was more important. But that's why I'm not in a front office and some of these other guys are. So yeah, I'm extremely excited about the future for Cincinnati. I don't think this year is a year where they're going to be Super Bowl contenders, but it 100% would not surprise me after a year or 2 in the draft and the offseason, if they continue to make the right decision with that team. I'm still a little iffy on Zach Taylor, but whatever he's doing is clearly working. This team could very well be a contender in a very, very short amount of time.
Yeah, and that's what you want to do, because I mean the blueprint to win in the NFL is to hit on a rookie quarterback, build a strong roster around him while he's on his rookie contract, and try to win a Super Bowl before you have to pay him. Because once you have to pay a quarterback, everybody knows that things kind of start to go to shit. So,
if you're looking for an example of that, you don't have to look very far this season. Even as great as the quarterback down in Kansas City is, they're still 3rd in that division. So
take a look over there in Seattle. They're another prime example of a team that did it right. And then
they won 1 Super Bowl and paid Russ, and that was it.
That Ross, the Legion of Boom is the Legion of Poo.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The NFL dynasties that the media proclaims as dynasties, they always seem to fizzle out relatively quickly.
Yeah, dynasties are not very long in the NFL.
unless you're Tom Brady and the Patriots.
That's it.
That's
end of list.
That's all you got.
But I mean, in terms of the Bengals, we're not going to have to find out long we're not going to have to wait long to find out where they stand, at least in terms of this division, because 2 of their next 3 weeks, they play the Ravens and the Browns, and then they've got a Jets game smashed in the middle of those. They got the next 3 weeks is Ravens, Jets, Browns, and then their bye week. So it'll be an interesting few weeks to see where they stand in terms of, is this a team that could possibly vie for a wild card spot, or are they a team that, just misses the playoffs, but then their trajectory and their projections for the 2022 season are looking really good? Because I think it's going to be one or the other. I don't think they're going to fall off a cliff. I think they're either going to be a surprise wild card team, or they're going to be a team that misses out on the playoffs by, they'll miss out on the wild card spot by 1-2 games, and a lot of people are going to be really excited about them going into next season, which is, I don't think that was the outlook for most people were expecting coming into this season. So I think this is a perfect surprise scenario here for Cincinnati. It makes a lot of sense. And I love Joe Burrow. I love Jamar Chase. That's a team that I'm definitely going to see myself watching. Whenever the Rams aren't on TV, the Bengals will be one of the teams I'm looking for, trying to find their game to watch them. Just Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are a lot of fun to watch. And T. Higgins, he's kind of been the forgotten man because he's been hurt and Jamar Chase has been so good. But, I think in 2 years from now, we're probably talking about those two guys as a top 5, maybe top 3 wide receiver duo in the entire league.
Yeah, sure.
I think T. Higgins is that good too.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that they're going to have one of the top wide receiver tandems in the NFL, within possibly by as soon as next season.
And I do want to mention another pickup that they made this offseason that has turned out to be one of the best pickups of any team this offseason. And that was Chidobe Awuzie at cornerback to pair with Jesse Bates. He has played like a top 5 cornerback so far through 6 weeks. Him and DJ Reader both are fantastic pieces on that defense. And if they can continue to play at the level they have, I think this team, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they actually did kind of sneak into that last wild card spot, because right now there's one team that has a better record than the Cincinnati Bengals in that conference, and that's the Baltimore Ravens.
Right.
So
it's crazy.
Yeah, it is absolutely wild. So yeah, that's just want to give those guys a shout out as well. And yeah, I'm curious to see this week. It's going to be a good game this week. I have a feeling, but the way the Ravens are playing, man, that's going to be a tall task. They're interesting, but yeah, that Bengals defense is going to be also too. I forgot, they signed Mike Hilton away from Pittsburgh, who was another underrated signing for that defense as well. So yeah,
that was a big hit to Pittsburgh too. They're missing him.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Cincinnati Bengals surprised through 6 weeks. If they beat the Ravens, don't be surprised if you're hearing about them again next week on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Though it'll be similar to the Browns being the consensus faller this week. I think they'll probably be a consensus riser next week if they pull that off. So my surprise team is led by the man that's on our YouTube thumbnail for this week, and that is the Tennessee Titans. And this is mostly driven purely off of this week's game, because I gave the Titans pretty much no shot to win this game with how dominant Buffalo has looked, and how I felt Tennessee has kind of just been just barely getting by. I thought that this was going to be, it was a home game for Tennessee, but I thought this was going to be a game that Buffalo was going to handle, and that simply wasn't the case.
To make a point real quick, I do want to give a shout out to Jared, because I even have the receipts. Jared texted me yesterday morning and said he thought the Titans would win the game.
He's made a couple really good calls on stuff like that. He called the Jets' first win of the season against the Titans.
Exactly. And
he's
really
made a couple of.
just think, man, the Titans are one win against the New York Jets away from being the best team in the conference. Yeah. So
yeah. But I want to give a shout out to the defensive line on this one, because while the defense as a whole has not been great by any means, I mean, they, even though they won, they still gave up 31 points. So it's not like it was an incredible defensive game, but they had 26 pressures last night. And in particular, I want to shout out to Nico Autry, who had the most of those. Was, yeah, I know that doesn't feel good for you. He had 7 of those 26 pressures. Jeffrey Simmons was impressive, but Jeffrey Simmons is always impressive, so that's not a surprise. And then Harold Landry, he put together 5 pressures as well. Bud Dupree had another 3 to add to that. So that the pass rush that they generated was really impressive to me last night. And then Armani Hooker, their safety, had him one hell of a game in pass coverage last night, in which somebody has to cover somebody in that secondary because the corners aren't doing it. So they should be thanking their lucky stars that Armani Hooker played as well as he did last night. And then, of course, Kevin Byard hasn't been as good in coverage as Hooker, but the safety tandem doesn't look bad. The pass rush doesn't look bad.
No, they should. Yeah, and I believe Harold Landry, that's a contract year for him. Mm-hmm. I think he leads the league in pressures in a contract year after playing like 2 or 3 years now for them. So yeah, they should 100% pay that guy a ton of money. Yeah, you should 100% make him and Bud Dupree the highest paid tandem in the league. And because we all know, like, when it's a contract year and these guys perform, you have to pay them massive money. So
right,
yeah, if you're the Titans, please pay Harold Landry a ton of money.
But nevertheless, he's been solid, and
he has been really good this year.
Their safeties are solid, but man, that cornerback room is a mess.
They just lost their first round pick.
Caleb Farley is out for the year, which is so unfortunate.
Which I don't think we know. I know he tore his ACL in college as well. I don't know if it's the same knee or not, but normally that's kind of a one and done kind of a surgery, like, because they take, a certain part, because I've, with all this stuff, the ACLs and stuff I know about, they take a certain part of a ligament that you have, and you only have one of these ligaments that you can spare, and they use that in your knee to repair it naturally. Once you tear it a second time, that's it. From then on out, you have an artificial ligament in your knee. And those, from everything I've understood with tearing it multiple times, the artificial ones do not hold up well at all. So I just hope that it's not the same knee that he tore in college, because that would not be good for him at all.
Right. So I wanted to give the pieces of the defense that were playing well a shout out, because the defense as a whole has caught a lot of flack, and rightfully so. They should. They've been overall, they've been a bad unit, but there are pieces of this defense that are playing well and that stood out specifically last night against the Bills. So I do want to give them a shout out. But that is all to say that the engine that runs this team, the reason that they are 4-2 and they're in the position that they're in, Derrick Henry is in the middle of a 3-year run unlike anything I have seen in my lifetime from the running back position. And this team kind of continues to defy all odds from what we as NFL fans think we know about the league. We think that the way to succeed is to have a strong defense, to have great coaching, to have a great quarterback, and to just put whoever you want out there at running back, because running backs are replaceable and it doesn't matter. And they have a quarterback who has had 2 strong years, but is playing like crap this year. Like he has not been good. Their coaching is just kind of whatever. I don't think they have a bad head coach, but I don't think he's anything special.
Yeah, he's average.
Yeah.
I will say, I will say this about Mike Vrabel though. To touch on that point, I think X's and O's. I don't think he's a very good head coach, especially whenever he's coached the defense. The defense has mainly been his, to handle.
He was a defensive guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, even then last year, I know he called the plays for the defense. And they have not been good at all. But I will give him credit. There might not be, other than like Harbaugh and maybe a couple other head coaches, there might not be a team that is better in situational football and preparation and being ready to play than the Tennessee Titans are. And I think
I'll tell you what he reminds me of. He's like Mike Tomlin light to me.
Yeah.
I think Tomlin is better in those aspects that you're talking about. But that's what I think
if he can find, which I know with Arthur Brown, he had a really good offensive coordinator. Now, we don't know if Arthur Brown's going to be a good head coach, because being a good head coach and being a great coordinator are two completely different things.
Mm-hmm.
Just because Arthur Smith is not winning in Atlanta doesn't mean he wasn't a great coordinator.
Right.
So I would be interested to see if Mike Vrabel found a great defensive coordinator, somebody like a Vic Fangio or somebody like that. If something happens in Denver, if he's able to get them. Because like I said, I think as a head coach, as far as getting his team ready to play and the decisions that are made in situational football, I think he is an elite level head coach in those situations. But I think X's and O's, and some, especially, with the defense and some of the other pieces and the decision making with the roster, I don't think he's very good in those aspects.
Right. No, I agree with with everything you said there. That's pretty much my exact feelings on Vrabel. And so, knowing what they have as a head coach, and then that their most important piece to this team is a running back who teams are not supposed to care about. You're not supposed to pay. You're not.
Yeah, I was going to say too, and I'm sorry to cut you off again.
No,
just so everybody understands, when we say running backs don't matter, that doesn't mean that we don't think running backs can be good players. That means generally, whenever you pay a running back, you're giving them a huge contract.
That can make your team fall apart quicker than paying a quarterback.
Yeah, well, and there's such a high likelihood of injury at that position that's generally it is not smart to pay a running back huge money because of injury, wear and tear. They usually don't last past the first contract, just because the wear and tear eventually catches up with them. Mm-hmm. And that is not happening.
No, Derrick Henry.
Whenever we say running backs don't matter, we're not saying they don't matter. We're not saying Derrick Henry doesn't matter, or Nick Chubb doesn't matter, or Jonathan Taylor doesn't matter. We're just saying
they definitely matter.
They matter, but generally speaking, it's not a smart decision to pay a running back a big contract.
It's a position that constantly gets hurt. There's constant turnover. And it's easy to find productive running backs in the middle rounds of NFL drafts, which is why we don't think that teams should be breaking the bank for a running back.
Jacksonville,
or drafting running backs in the first round.
Jacksonville.
So, which I mean, granted for the Steelers, if they didn't have Najee Harris, they'd probably be a 0-win team right now.
Yeah, and I was going to say, even with Najee,
they're still not a good team.
They're not
good. That he's going to waste away on his rookie contract there most likely.
It's a Lamborghini in a trailer park.
Yeah, exactly. But for this team, the running back position absolutely does matter more than probably any other team in the NFL. And what Derrick Henry
maybe for more than any other team in NFL history.
Yeah, what this man is doing and what he has been doing with the volume that he has had, it has been remarkable to watch. And the fact that the big thing for me this year with Henry is they're starting to kind of get him involved in the passing game too. That's something that the last couple of years and pretty much in his career, it's been nothing. It's been non-existent. And this year he's starting to somewhat get incorporated in that as well. And I never understood why he wasn't, because while he's not
Well,
like a Christian McCaffrey
I was gonna
level
say,
pass catcher.
I know he had a pretty high drop rate early on in his career.
Right. But I think he's made, like, even last year in the limited catches he had, I remember he doesn't look bad. Like
No.
he doesn't look uncomfortable. He doesn't look like he shouldn't be out there doing it. And why the hell would you not want to get Derrick Henry the ball in space? Like it just seems like a no-brainer to me. So, good on Tennessee for starting to do a little bit more this year. And adding that extra, that little, that next piece to his game, I think has really, because I had the last couple of years, even with how great he was on the ground, I was hesitant to put him above like Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, guys that are true 3-down backs that are very good at catching the ball. And now I'm without hesitation very comfortable in saying that Derrick Henry is easily the best running back in football. And what he's doing for this team right now is just is mind-blowing. And
It's MVP level. I think, maybe outside of Lamar Jackson, and I know it'll never go, outside of 2012 when Adrian Peterson did it. Which, I mean, if the Titans sneak into, a high seed into the playoffs, it might happen again. I still don't see it just because it's such a quarterback award, which sucks, honestly. But
I've been petitioning the last few years to just turn the MVP into just call it the quarterback award,
most valuable
and then,
quarterback.
And then change the offensive player of the year to like the most valuable offensive player. Yeah. Like if they're gonna just give it to quarterbacks, just call it what it is. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, I know award's an award, but like, but put a little bit, give these running backs and these receivers that are having these incredible careers or incredible seasons, just give them a little bit more props for it, I guess, because if that they don't have a shot at winning MVP unless Derrick Henry, breaks the rushing record and runs for 25 touchdowns,
and they finish, top 2 or 3 in the conference.
Yeah. So, so I mean, my biggest surprise this week was the Titans. I thought this was going to be a stretch of, they have like 3 or 4 really tough games coming up. And I gave them little to no shot of winning any of them, including the Bills game. I thought that they were going to go on a losing streak that kicked off this week, and the losing streak is going to have to wait at least one more week because
they get the Chiefs next week, which we all know what Derrick Henry's probably going to do to that defense. But
oh my God, yeah.
But we all know what that defense is going to do to Patrick Mahomes.
Mahomes is, for all the noise that's been made about his interceptions, Mahomes is also on pace to have his highest touchdown total of his career as well. So, Janoris Jenkins, have fun with that one, man.
Yeah, like the interception thing, like it's bound to catch up with him. Like last year, I can't remember where I said it might have actually been a PFF thing, but he had 23 interceptions dropped by defenders last year. So, I mean,
it takes a lot of chances. He throws a lot of
you're not going to get lucky like that multiple years in a row. Eventually they're going to catch up with you. But the thing that separates him is he also throws a lot of touchdowns.
So, and he appears to have a very short-term mindset. Like he doesn't doesn't get gun shy. Like he'll go out there and throw a pick, and then first 75
snap, yard
like first snap of the next series, he'll chuck it 50 yards downfield without thinking about it. So
and he made 2 in this last game, Mahomes. Did you see the throw he made where he juked the defender out, ran to his right, and threw across his body?
To the left side.
Did you see the alternate angle?
I did. I saw it on Bleacher Report yesterday.
It hit him in stride. Like, that's such a dumb throw. Like, that's dumb. Like,
makes no sense.
Yeah, like nobody should be able to generate that much power and accuracy.
I don't know if anybody else in the league completes that pass. Maybe Rodgers.
Aaron. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe Aaron. I think Aaron probably could.
Other than that, I don't think anybody else makes that throw.
Shit, man. Carson, man. Like,
look, he has the best passer rating of any quarterback in the league on throws 20+ yards downfield right now. Like by that number, he's been the best deep passer in the league.
He's fucking slinging it. Walk it to him, Wentz, baby. 2 sprains coming in hot.
Him being better than Ryan Tannehill was not something I saw coming into the season.
Outside, and I will say this about the Titans. While I do love the way they play because it's outside of their defense, because I can't stand watching their defense. I really do. I love watching great running backs go to work.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I'm still very hesitant to completely buy in on this team.
I agree.
Because of the fact that unless Derrick Henry goes for $150 and 3 touchdowns,
yeah,
they don't look competitive at all. I mean, we saw what happened with the Jets. He was even decent in the Jets game, and they didn't win. Obviously, we saw what happened in Arizona, week 1. And, and even then, like with the Colts game, they held him to 140 yards and 0 touchdowns. Carson Wentz literally could not walk in that game, and they only won by 1 possession.
Yeah, that was the one game this year where Tannehill's thrown more than 1 touchdown in a game.
Yeah, and it was,
that's where
it was a very, very, very banged up Colts roster.
Yeah,
and they only won, like I said, they only won by 1 possession. So, and unless Derrick Henry has superhero efforts, the team around him, I don't know if they're able, especially with the way Tannehill's playing this year.
And, that's the thing.
And Julio can't stay on the field, which has been an issue the last couple of years. AJ Brown, once again too, it's another hamstring. That's what it always seems to be, is a hamstring issue. It's a soft tissue injury. And as we know with hamstring issues, those generally don't get better as the season goes on.
No.
So yeah, it's unfortunate because I do, me and you had a little argument over the last couple of days about, you think he's a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. I do not in the year 2021. Now, if this was 2019, 2018, 100% agree with you. But I think after the last couple of years, especially with the way some of these rookies, like right now at this moment in 2021, I'm not sure I would take him over Jamar Chase right now. Because one, Jamar Chase actually plays, but even when he has played, he's been so much more productive. But it's more to do with just this year than it is in years past. Like I said, I don't have a problem with you saying even over the last 5 years he's been a top 10, or I don't even have a problem saying he's been a top 3 wide receiver over the last 5-10 years. I wouldn't argue that at all. I just think in the year 2021, I don't think he's a top 5 receiver right now with the way some of these other guys have come on. And as always,
it's a very talented position.
Yeah, exactly. We're in a great wide receiver renaissance, you could say, with some of these guys coming in. And a lot of that, of course, has to do with the offensive roles. Because not only can you not touch quarterbacks, but you can also not touch wide receivers down the field, or else you're getting a pass interference penalty. It's
right.
It sucks because I love watching great defense, and I don't know if we'll ever see a great defense like we did with Seattle, that year with the Legion of Boom. I think that might have been even as good as the Rams were last year. The rules have just made it so difficult to be a great defense over an entire season. And it's unfortunate, but yeah, I'm still a little hesitant to buy in on the Titans as actual contenders, regardless of their record. Just because, like I said, all it takes is one Derrick Henry off week, and it's a wrap. So, and then not to mention too, they have a tough schedule coming up. The Colts schedule over the next 5 weeks is, we get San Francisco with Jimmy G back. Thank God we don't have to face Trey Lance, because they've made the decision to start Jimmy G. Yes. And then we have the Jaguars. So the Colts schedule gets a little easier, and then we have the Titans after that. So, I mean, there's a very realistic chance that, they could be tied, record wise going into that Titans game, Titans versus Indianapolis in Indianapolis. And then whoever wins that game, if Indianapolis should win, they will then have the tiebreaker will be even, and they will have control of the division. So it's not just a wrap just yet.
No, that was certainly not what I was saying.
Yeah, I'm just speaking out loud because of my insecurities as a Colts fan. But yeah, it's what sucks is now because of the Baltimore game last week with the Colts dropping that and the Titans beating the Bills. Pretty much every game coming out for the Colts is going to be a must-win game. At least over the next 5 weeks, which luckily they probably have the easiest schedule over the next 5 weeks. So, and then they're finally getting healthy, and the last 3 weeks of, Carson Wentz is extremely, you can tell, like, once they're starting to get healthy. Quentin Nelson should be back this week. Braden Smith should be back this week. The line's coming together again. The defense is getting a little bit healthier. Darius Leonard is absolutely fucking ridiculous at creating turnovers. Like, it's dumb how many like every week that guy creates a turnover. So yeah, we're not quite dead yet. But
no, the main reason I still don't feel, even though I picked the Titans to win the division preseason, and I thought I would be getting a much different version of Ryan Tannehill than what I've gotten so far this year. And the difference in Tannehill through 6 weeks versus Wentz through 6 weeks is the reason why I'm not comfortable with the pick that I made in the preseason, because Wentz has easily been better. And when both rosters are healthy, the Colts do have the better roster. So if Wentz continues to play the way that he does, Ryan Tannehill continues to play the way he does. Yeah, if both teams get healthy and both quarterbacks continue to play the way they're playing, I think the Colts, have the better team. So yeah, for this to be a real thing for the Titans, Tannehill has to get better. He has to find that Arthur Smith magic from last year.
And that defense, like, eventually they're going to have to stop somebody eventually.
Yeah, I don't, to be honest, unless they can make a trade, I don't think there's any hope for the corners. I don't. Their front, I don't think, is terrible, and
their linebackers have been really bad at tackling too. You saw that, right? There's a lot of missed tackles.
Yeah, I think the pass rush can be okay. The defensive line on the interior, I think, is strong, and I like their safeties. But yeah, the line, if a running back does make it past the defensive line, you don't have much faith in the linebackers tackling them. And the corners definitely ain't tackling them. No, and then if a quarterback is targeting a receiver that's being covered by one of their outside corners, Jenkins has certainly been better than their other option on the other side of the field, but even he hasn't been, he's clearly not the Janoris Jenkins of old. So there's plenty of concerns to go with this roster, but this pick was essentially just to give Derrick Henry his flowers, because this dude's been absolutely incredible. So
yeah, dude, it's crazy. Like, I almost feel bad for him in a way, though. Like, how, like, I know we talked about it,
how hard he has to work for this team to win.
He's on pace for like 472 carries right now.
Yeah,
like almost 500 carries in one season, and especially playing in the NFL, like, that is just an insane amount of punishment. And
it looks like a walk in the park to him too, is the thing that's crazy. Like, it doesn't look like it affects him at all. He's just like, another week clocking in.
Yeah. Give me the ball. And, I think that's another, thing to give him his flowers on, is just the way he prepares in the off season for that type of workload.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Yeah, there's no such thing as an off season for this dude.
I hate that he plays for the Titans. I wish he would play for any other franchise.
Right. So yeah, I mean, that's week 6 in a nutshell for us. So to wrap this thing up real quick, we will discuss the smash or pass. We will talk about we we will talk about the hits and length, and we will breeze by the misses. So I will let you kick it off because you did handle the running backs this weekend, and that's the first position we always cover. So I will let you discuss your running back picks for this week.
Yes. So my running back picks this week, all pretty decent. If you went with any three of these guys, even the pass, I think you weren't really disappointed. So weirdly, the pass was my lowest ranked player who ended up as RB14. But for Smash, I had James Robinson, who finished with 17.6 fantasy points. He ended up as RB12 on the week. So he did finish as an RB1, not quite the top 5 level that I had, projected for him this week, but by no means was it a bad week. I think you were perfectly happy if you started James Robinson, which of course you're starting James Robinson.
Right.
But the pass was Alex Collins for the Seattle Seahawks, who did have a pretty tough matchup. Geno Smith played pretty well in that game too. So I think that kind of took a little bit of pressure off of him, but he finished as RB14. So once again, if you started Alex Collins, even though he did not finish as an RB1, I don't think you were necessarily projecting him to finish as a high-end RB1 last week. I think if he did, you were happy with it, and he was right there on the edge at running back 14. So I think you're still happy if you played Alex Collins. The one I'm most proud of, though, was Khalil Herbert, who was the running back sleeper of the week, who outplayed both of these guys, looked absolutely fantastic. I know we made the baby Nick Chubb comparison on the show last week, and he looked every bit of that.
Yeah, he looked good. Just on the field as a runner, he looked good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, looks fantastic. He's not going to give you much in the passing game, but as a running back who can chew up yards and be used in the red zone to score touchdowns, he was absolutely fantastic. Finished as RB11 on the week with 18.2 fantasy points. And I believe these are half-point PPR statistics.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm actually happy with all of these. I'm not disappointed. And if you played any three of these guys, I don't think you're necessarily disappointed at all.
No. Alex Collins was certainly better than we thought he would be. Some of that was him getting into the end zone too.
Yeah, the end zone was the big one.
So if you benched Alex Collins, you wouldn't be happy about that. But I don't think there were, with the injuries that teams are dealing with and bye weeks kicking in and things like that. I don't think there was anybody benching Alex Collins this week anyway. So, you probably tempered expectations going into the week, and then you got to have this nice little surprise performance on Sunday night. So, the wide receivers were handled by Jarrett, who could not be with us tonight, but he did well, calling a bounce back week for Tyree Kill, who finished as a wide receiver 12, had 18.1 fantasy points. Another great call was his wide receiver pass, which was DJ Moore, who had been off to a hot start to the season.
Pretty bold call there.
Yeah, and he came in as wide receiver 44, only 7.4 fantasy points in half-point leagues. So definitely, not the output you've been used to getting from DJ Moore up to this point in the season. And if you're plugging him into daily lineups, certainly not the output you're expecting for his price point in daily. So a great call there by Jared to pass on DJ Moore for this week. Two big calls in back-to-back weeks, because his running back pass last week was Aaron Jones, and he nailed that one too. So I mean, he's been,
when Jared, digging. What we're learning is if Jared tells you not to play a player, you don't play that guy.
Right. And then his wide receiver sleeper, unfortunately, was not quite as successful in Zach Pascal. But he didn't have any fantasy points this week, but he only had one target. The Jonathan Taylor kind of stole the show. They had a commanding lead on the Houston Texans this weekend, and passing the ball to Zach Pascal was not necessarily a necessity. And he also he makes a lot of his work
back too. So I mean,
right, he makes a lot of his work catching touchdowns. It seems like this guy just somehow always finds the end zone, and those touchdowns.
Which he's much more. I will say Pascal's much more used in the red zone than he is, deep plays or marching down the field. He's much more of a red zone guy. And if you watch the game, you know that the Colts didn't really necessarily need to get into the red zone to score touchdowns because Carson Wentz was bombing it all over the field for 50 plus yard completions all day long. So they didn't really get into the red zone a lot, even though they put up a ton of points. So yeah, it's just unfortunate for Pascal. The good news is if you are a Pascal owner, it's unfortunate news for Colts fans, especially me, who I love Paris Campbell, but Paris Campbell looks like he is going to miss a significant amount of time, possibly even the year, with a foot injury. Just an extremely brutal break for a guy who just can't ever seem to catch a break, basically. Because the talent's there. We saw it. Scored a 51-yard touchdown, in the first quarter. And that was the play he hurt his foot on. He's probably going to miss some time. So Zach Pascal will definitely be back and be more involved in the offense next week because he's probably going to take that slot position from Paris Campbell.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially you don't have to overreact. There's better days ahead for
Zach
Pascal.
Yeah.
So tight end was the position that I unfortunately had to handle this week, and I'm thankful that is over. But my tight end smash of the week, the guy that I said was my favorite play this week behind the obvious tight ends, the Travis Kelce, the Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, those type of guys, was Ricky Seals-Jones, and ended up coming in at tight end 6 on the week, had 13.8 fantasy points. Had a nice touchdown catch from pass from Taylor Heineke. So ended up putting in a good fantasy day. My tight end pass, unfortunately, was Jared Cook, who came in as tight end 9 with 10.5 fantasy points. And it still blows my mind that you only need 10 fantasy points to be a top 10 tight end on the week. But that's just the nature of the tight end position.
Welcome to the Thunderdome.
Yeah, him being the tight end 9 doesn't really disappoint me. The way it happens disappointed me because I told people that it looked like Donald Parham was turning into the red zone tight end based off his usage the last couple weeks, and then the touchdown that Jared Cook catches is on the goal line. 1 yard touchdown. That if that 6.5 points doesn't happen, he's probably down in the 20s. And if Donald Parham would have continued his usage and would have been in there catching that touchdown instead, this call would have looked a lot better. So that was really why I was disappointed in how that one played out, because I thought that we were seeing a changing of the guard, at least in the red zone, and it did not appear to be that way. So I did come into tight end 9. And then my tight end sleeper for the week was Mo Alley-Cox, Big Mo. He was able to get into the end zone. Thankfully, that was what saved his day, as it does most tight ends. But that's what I told you, that you would be needing is whenever you're digging in the 15 and the 20s for tight ends, you're hoping for a touchdown. And I said the Mo Alley-Cox was as good of a bet as anyone to give you one. He came in as tight end 13 on the week, had 9.3 fantasy points, and delivered that touchdown that we so desperately needed.
Dropped another touchdown as well.
Which is not very Mo Alley-Cox of him
to
do that.
No,
but
he hardly ever drops them. But yeah, it's I mean, his day could have even been better. He could have finished top 3 more than likely.
Yeah, that would have, another touchdown would have put him in that area. So that was the tight end position, and I'm so glad that that's behind me, and I don't have to do that for another couple weeks. And then we had the quarterback. So I will let you kick off the quarterback.
And to me, at this point, I would almost rather do tight ends than quarterbacks, because it's just such a, I'm not necessarily going to say a tough position. If anything, that might be its detriment, is that it's the same guys every week. So, I mean, it's so hard to project like, oh, this guy's going to be a smash this week. Well, of course he's going to be a smash this week.
He's a smash every week.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, and then, we're projecting these guys as quarterback pass as, we're not, nobody's going to roll up in here and pick Big Ben as your quarterback pass, because how many guys are starting Big Ben, So whenever you have 32 quarterbacks, most people, we project these as 12-team leagues just because that's about an average.
It's the most common league, I think.
Yes. I mean, whenever you only have to pick between 12 quarterbacks out of 32 guys, it's
not easy.
Yeah. It's pretty cut and dry for the most part. So when you're trying to make these bolder type of takes, it doesn't work out very well. So maybe we just need to, kiss it, keep it simple, stupid. And just, start, Patrick Mahomes is going to be our quarterback smash next week. Just spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Going up against the Titans defense. Play Patrick Mahomes. So the quarterback smash was Taylor Heineke. That did not work out. His tight end scored more points than him this week, which is never a good thing. But yeah, he finished as quarterback 23. He actually has not looked good for a couple weeks now after that big game he had back whenever he was our quarterback sleeper for the week, where he finished, I believe, as quarterback 3. So
Yeah.
didn't get the same magic with him this week. So you were more than likely streaming him anyway, and you still might be streaming him in this week with the bye weeks. Quarterback pass was 100% on me because of Kyler, and I picked Kyler Murray, who finished as quarterback 6. Now I will say what I projected as far as him not running.
That happened. He did not run.
Yeah, he did not run. But what I forgot is that he got better weapons, and he also improved as a passer to where he doesn't have to run anymore. So while if this was last year, I'd probably be looking pretty good this week. He's just progressed in such a great way, kind of similar to Lamar. And obviously, the weapons, there in Arizona are just insane. He has guys all over the field that can make plays to where he didn't need to run. So even though I called, he's not going to run at all, that's going to be in the majority of his points. He didn't run. So I was correct on that, but him throwing the ball is just so efficient, so good. And he finished as quarterback 6 on the week. Like I said, even on the show last week, you're not benching Kyler Murray regardless. Nobody in their right mind's playing Taylor Heineke over Kyler Murray, regardless if they're a smash and pass. So yeah, I'll take full responsibility for that one. Finished quarterback 6. Even though I am proud that I did call him not running the ball as much. So
right. I will take over for this one because this one's on me. Quarterback sleeper I had pegged Big Ben as my guy for a sleeper this week, somebody that was being ranked out in the 20s that I thought could have a better finish than that on the week. And he did not. He finished down in the 20s. Quarterback 24, 11.9 fantasy points. And I'm just thankful Big Ben is not bad enough to ruin Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson. Thankfully, the volume is there where those guys can still be good. But look, if Big Ben can't get it done against that Seattle defense, there's not a single week I'm going to be comfortable starting him, rostering him, playing him in any matchup. It doesn't get much better than Seattle right now from a defensive standpoint. It just doesn't. And this team needed an overtime win to beat Geno Smith. And if they're not named Najee Harris or Deontay Johnson, count me out on anything Steelers related. I'm not playing them. I'm not starting them.
Is playing okay.
He's a good player and he's playing real football. He's playing really well, but just like fantasy wise, those are the only 2 names from the Steelers I'm starting on a weekly basis. And you will not hear me bring up Big Ben's name on this show again, unless it's just to talk about how cooked he is. This one was on me, and with the weapons he has and the matchup that was being set up, and I really thought that there was a bigger day in store for where he could have one of those 3 touchdown Big Ben games, and that most certainly was not the case. So this call was on me. So the quarterback sleeper did not work out this week, and we were 1 week too early on Justin Herbert. If we would have had Justin Herbert as our quarterback pass for this week, we would have been looking real good. We had him last week, unfortunately, where he had the best week of his career.
Even Lamar as our pass would have been.
Yeah. Lamar would have been. So there's going to be top quarterbacks that, that have bad weeks. It's just the top quarterbacks are more likely to have good weeks than bad weeks. So it's tough to pick out that one top 10 quarterback that's going to be off this week, or that the 1 or 2 top 12 quarterbacks that are going to have a bad week, whenever there's going to be 10 or 11 that have good weeks. So Yeah, that one is tough. I agree with you. But yeah, so I mean, we did have some the running back smash, the running back sleeper, the wide receiver smash, the wide receiver pass, the tight end smash. We did have some solid calls this week, all in all. So, take the good with the bad, trust the process. The one thing I do feel good about all of these picks is if you go back to the previous show and listen to the explanations, we're not just throwing names on the wall and hoping it sticks. We're not just looking to, generate clicks with big names. There are reasons for these picks. There are trends that are discussed. There is there's critical thinking that is put into this. It's not just us looking at a list and saying, I pick that guy.
Yeah.
And
throwing darts at a dartboard.
Yeah. So that is the one thing that I do feel good about. And it has produced more good than bad so far through 6 weeks, I feel like. So, but yeah, so that's kind of the summary of where we finished week 6. So we're going to do this all over again in week 7, and there's going to be hits, there's going to be misses. That's just part of the process.
Yeah, especially this week with so many guys on buys.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's going to be one heck of a smash or pass and a DFS show. So also too, we didn't touch on how the DFS lineup did, which I didn't actually play this week.
I did have it played. I had it pulled up too. So it did not cash this week, unfortunately, but there were some really good calls by Jared that did. It was just outside of cashing, I believe, but he had the Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper stack, which unfortunately the stack to have was CeeDee Lamb. He was the receiver that had the big game, but Dak had a fine game, so you were fine at quarterback. He had Jonathan Taylor, who was awesome. Javonte Williams, unfortunately, had a down game. And I mean, he just continues to be in that 50-50 split with Melvin Gordon. So,
and Gordon looks good too. So,
yeah,
I mean, that's not going away.
Right. His dart throw is kind of cheap play to be able to put in some of these top guys was Van Jefferson, who unfortunately only had 3 receptions for 19 yards. He's a guy that, if he does hit on that deep touchdown like he did in week 1 against the Bears, that could be a guy that could end up winning you a lot of money, as cheap as his salary is, but this just was not the week for that. Tyree Kill was the other wide receiver who had a fine game, 18 fantasy points on FanDuel. Dalton Schultz was the tight end who had another solid game. And then our flex play was Joe Mixon, who was one of the best plays that he had this week. Joe Mixon had a huge game, and then the Denver Broncos defense. So ended up being 130 points and being just outside of cashing. So I want to say that. Let me see. Yeah, yeah, not far out from cashing at all. So,
which I think we cashed the previous 2 weeks.
Yeah, we
even
did
for just a little. So I mean, you're gonna have a couple weeks where we win some money and make some runs, and you're gonna have a week or so where we don't. It's just the nature of the beast. So
Yep.
Excited to get into it next week, especially like I said, with all the bye weeks and injuries. It's gonna be a wild show for sure.
Very interesting.
Getting into some of these names. So that pretty much just wraps up our review. DFS, smash or pass, risers, fallers, all that good stuff that we do every week. I'll let Andrew go ahead and close this one out, and we will be able to get ready for next week's show.
Yeah. So first and foremost, if you're still here, if you're still hanging out with us at this point in the show, thank you for hanging out with us through the episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, and if you're still sticking around at this point, hopefully you did. You can find us pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found: Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever the case may be. We would appreciate if you guys could go over there and subscribe, follow, whatever that platform wants you to do. And then if you want the visuals, go with the audio, head over to YouTube. The Amateur Experts Podcast. We've got a YouTube channel over there as well. Whenever you get over there, make sure you subscribe to the channel and then hit the little bell that pops up whenever you do subscribe, so that you can be notified of the new shows whenever they do go live. There's, we're putting out 2 episodes a week, so you're not going to get blown up with notifications, but you will be made aware of when the new episodes do go live. And then, while you're here on the video, we would appreciate it if you could drop a like on the video for us, and then hop down in the comments and let us know where you agree, where you disagree, that type of thing. The YouTube the YouTube algorithm appreciates the likes and the comments, and then we also appreciate the interaction and getting to reply in the comments and have, continue the discussion basically down there with you guys as well. So, all this, any of the support we can get, we appreciate. We're going to keep doing this thing regardless because we have fun with it, but it would be more fun if there were more people to have the discussion with. So, but as always, the main thing is thank you guys for the support, and we look forward to continuing this ride with the 2021 NFL season.
Yes, sir. So week 6 in the books, on to week 7. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you here in just a few days.